What if fear of the truth didn't hold us back?
Instead of having to do the research yourself, we've done it for you. Tune in each week as real moms drop some truth bombs.
Answers start now.
Welcome back to Truth Moms podcast.
Welcome back.
Is that?
Welcome back, Cotter.
No, I'm saying, are we allowed to do that?
What, sing?
Yeah. Is that like don't we get in trouble with the, whatchamacallit? We have to pay royalties or something to sing that out loud.
Oh my gosh, you can sing a song.
Like, you're costing us money, Courtney.
Like, copyright infringement or whatever.
Are we allowed to fucking
It's my voice.
And it's under 3 seconds. You're fine.
Yeah, it's good.
Welcome back to the Truth Moms podcast. We are talking all things motherhood and pretty much anything unfiltered at this point. We've established that in episode 1. So
You're welcome.
While we're unfiltered, we might as well talk about our birth stories, because I feel like that, you know, the first couple of episodes that we're doing definitely are kind of a get to know us. Mm-hmm. And maybe part of what makes us moms is the fact that we did have birth. So let's talk about that.
Birth.
We did give birth.
We gave birth. I don't know your story at all.
I don't know much. I know some of your story. You know what we should probably talk about is pregnancy, because I think it's so funny, because I'm obviously that's just why I'm so out of freaking breath now. I am in week 22.
Oh, yes, we have not talked about this.
Yes. Week 22. That's why I am like bloated looking all the time. Week 22 of my second baby, and the difference in pregnancy is insane. So I remember people being, because with River, I think too, this may be indicative of first moms, right? Like, everything happens for the first time. And I see this with like moms on Instagram too, like friends that are like first time moms. I'm like, man, was I that annoying when I was like, oh my gosh, I got this, and this is what I'm getting for my hospital bag, and oh, we should totally get this, and this is so necessary. And I'm like, how do you know what's necessary until you actually are in it?
I see people that buy so much stuff, and I'm like, you're gonna use that for 2 weeks. I just want to be like, just go take it back.
Yeah. and I think about it too, because I remember like everyone's like, what do you put in your hospital bag? Like I was some kind of expert, you know?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I would put literally 2 of the things that I put in my hospital bag would I actually put back in that hospital bag.
Yeah.
And so you just learn so much. And I think pregnancy, I was just so unaware, because especially first time pregnancy, if all is good, right? So if there's no complications at all and you're just pregnant, and you were like me without literally any symptoms the first trimester. I was kind of tired with her, but I had absolutely no symptoms with her. I thought that's just, pregnancy was a breeze, you know? And so I'm going to love being pregnant. I love my body pregnant. And I was like, miss pregnancy.
One symptom, like not like
the only symptom that I had, which wasn't even really a symptom in of itself. Besides just being like maybe a little tired, I wasn't even as tired as I was now. The only thing that I had was that I could not have orange juice.
Okay.
And I can't explain it because it wasn't heartburn.
I had the same thing.
I was like craving orange juice.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted something cold, and the thought of orange juice was just great. And
yeah.
I remember it went down, it came right back up, and I tried it a couple times. But that was it. Yeah. There was no food aversions. There was no headaches. I was not super sleepy. I had absolutely no morning sickness. This round, I've had it all. Mm-hmm. And surprisingly, I can drink orange juice this round.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So like, okay, great. Well, this makes no sense. And
this is why I think it's a boy. Because it's exactly how my best friend was.
Okay, so here's the thing though, is that I'm carrying so tiny.
Yeah.
I'm actually nervous because I haven't eaten as much.
Yeah.
With baby number 2 as I have with baby number 1.
I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, I am a little bit nervous about that. But what's so crazy, I think, is like your first pregnancy, you're just so blissfully unaware of what's to come. Plus, like, you know, you're going through the symptoms and you maybe have a dog, right? Or a cat or whatever. You have animals that can pretty much self-sustain for a couple hours while you take a nap. Like, you don't have any guilt over whatever with being pregnant round 2, 3, 4 and plus. You have other children that are needing you, right?
That's the thing that scares me the most.
Yeah. And I have first child syndrome, which is not really a syndrome at all. I'm making this up. But in that, my mom, I was the firstborn, and my mom had me young. And so when she had other husbands and had other families, not my mom herself, but that dad, once they had their own baby, that was the family.
Yeah.
You know, and my mom really did my mom did a lot of things wrong, honestly. But one of the things she did do was she always tried to incorporate, like, my mom never made me feel like an outcast, but her husbands did. And, it was hard. And so there's a part of me that has to remember that River isn't again, nothing against half siblings or step siblings. This is just how my experience was. But in my brain, I'm like, okay, she has the same dad, right? So it's not like this baby will have a different connection with their father because this is the same father.
Right.
And we have a really good relationship. Again, there's no harm, no shame against single moms, but like having a really good relationship with the father. My father was not in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came in, he was not the person I thought he was.
Right.
And so my, and even in her divorces since then, like those, once they separated, that became very tumultuous and it takes a toll on the child. So we don't have that. So I'm like, okay, I don't have that. I'm not a young mom in the sense that like, again, I've made a lot of choices. We talked about in episode 1 that like I made a lot of choices to be close to my kid because I can. And because I believe, because I'm a little bit older, I don't necessarily need to. I don't feel like I'm missing out by not going out.
Right.
So my kid's always included. That will never change.
Right.
And also because I think I was so traumatized being the first child and feeling less than loved. I will not allow myself to do that to River.
No.
And a lot of things I'm learning online too. We could probably go into gentle parenting on a totally different thing, but I don't consider myself a gentle parent. I consider myself a very conscious parent. And
I like that.
I communicate with River as much as I can with the limited language that we have with each other. But one of the things I saw online that I'll never forget, there was a creator that said, when you have your second baby and your toddler needs you, don't talk to the baby, talk to the toddler.
Yes.
So instead of saying, hold on, River, I need to get the baby, you say, hold on, baby, River needs me right now. And
Exactly.
And what she said made so much sense. She goes, that baby will never remember being like having to like lay down in a crib for 2 seconds. Right.
I saw that too. And
but your toddler will remember the neglect.
Yep.
And so as long as my position is obviously because also, as much as I love my mom, one of the things that I remember, and I hear it even from some of my friends who have older kids who play with River, they'll be like, you're older than her. And I take issue with that because, yes, if there's a 9-year-old playing with River and they're stealing toys and crying,
they should know better.
You know better.
Yeah.
But like 4 or 5 years old, or like if there's a 2 age gap
and Easton.
Right. If I yell at River and I'm like, you're older. How does River doesn't understand age.
No.
How do I explain to her that because she's older, she should know better?
Yeah.
1 year difference in babyhood means nothing. It just means that they understand a couple extra words.
Yeah.
So as long as I stay conscious of the fact that even though they are technically going to be almost 3 years difference, that my kid is still a kid and she still needs her mom, and that my baby has to go through toddlerhood, but my toddler still has to go through toddlerhood. I think that would be my biggest thing that I'm learning for the multiples.
Really interesting. Yeah.
Now, how it all play out, I've learned, right? Because same thing, like first baby, I'm like, oh, I got this. And thankfully River was an easy baby, slept through the night, had no issues. But there's a lot of things that I'm like, whoa, I didn't think about postpartum. I didn't think about the anxiety. I didn't think about any of the changes. I didn't think about when we talked about vaccines in episode 1. I didn't none of that stuff made any conscious effort in my brain until she came in. I was like, oh shit, this is a totally different world.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a lot to learn with 2 that I just don't know yet.
Yeah. I heard that going from 0 to 1 is really hard, and you don't know, but you know so much more about yourself as a mom.
Yeah.
You're going to handle things. You've already had that roadmap kind of planned out. There's definitely going to be things that catch you off guard, don't get me wrong. But what I've heard is that it's a lot easier from going from 1 to 2 than it is 0 to 1.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, again, if the stars align and we have 2 healthy babies, then hopefully there's not much of a difference, but managing 2 personalities, like
that's the scary part.
Holy crap is going to be, because I'm definitely even like in friend groups, like I'm a very intimate person. Like I am like a 1 or 2 or like, let's have an intimate dinner with my friends. Like I am not a let's go party with 7,000 people kind of person.
Right. Did you belong to a sorority?
No.
Yeah.
That was overwhelming for me.
Yeah. No, that's too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it.
It might have been the Aquarius in me too, that I'm just like, I'm so aloof.
Yeah.
And like, I want to be close to people and I love people, but I don't want to feel tethered to them. So motherhood was surprisingly easy because I thought, man, I'm going to hate it, but I absolutely love that part of it. So anyway, so pregnancy was, for me, I was like, oh, this is a breeze. It's easy.
Yeah.
And then labor, like I was so convinced I was going to have an unmedicated labor. So convinced.
Yeah.
Which was great. A for effort, but E for effort, A for effort.
A.
Okay. I was like E because it begins with E, but it's an A for effort.
We'll take a poll on this one. Drop what you think below.
What about you? What about pregnancy?
So I think I have to even go a little further back was getting pregnant. I tried for a summer, and I could just tell you guys, like, when you feel like something is off with your body, trust that feeling and go and get checked, because I was very grateful that it was an easier fix, but essentially I knew something was off my body. I felt like I was getting pregnant and I was immediately like having like a miscarriage essentially within a week, just from a lot of different symptoms that I was having. And I've always had very heavy periods, like very heavy, like I don't even want to get into all the graphic details, but yes, it's a lot. And I've always felt like there was something off. Painful, yes. Yeah, my second day I would be rolling around in pain. But anyways, I knew something was off, and my OBGYN finally listened to me. I went through a lot of OBGYNs throughout my life where they were just like, oh, it's fine. As long as you're having regular periods, you're fine. You're good. You can get pregnant, da, 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 da. Well, no, I actually got a OBGYN that would actually listen to me and said, let's get an ultrasound. And I said, okay. So as soon as I got the ultrasound, the tech's like, this is kind of strange. You essentially have 2 uteruses.
Oh,
and I was
that's
like,
more common than you think. I just read about this. Yeah.
Okay. So you have 2 uteruses. So essentially, I'm going to put a picture below. I have like 2.
What is it called? It's called something.
Septate uterus.
That's it. Okay.
So your uterus looks like this. It's a perfect triangle. Not perfect, but you know what I mean. Mine looks like kind of like what's his name, Mr. Krabs' eyeballs from SpongeBob SquarePants. That's what mine looks like. It's crazy looking. It connects at the bottom. There's many different shapes to septate uteruses. The one that I had, they were able to operate on to make it a normal shaped uterus. They took the muscle that was in the middle and just kind of pushed it back.
But some people live with 2 uteruses.
Yeah, some people get pregnant with them. But what we were finding out was that most likely I would go through a lot of miscarriages before I would get pregnant. So a lot of doctors, what she said, would actually not do the surgery. Now they would wait for those miscarriages. But she was like, why would I do that to you? Like, why put you through that pain? So thank you.
Yeah.
So I got the surgery done, and as soon as I got the surgery done, I was cleared to get pregnant, and I did, like within a month. Reproductive health and women's health is a whole nother topic again.
So that's what I was about to say when I was looking up is there's a book that I've been reading called Blood by Jen Gunter. And what I really love, or Gunter, but there's a really great excerpt in the beginning of the book in which she says that women's menstrual health, or women's health in general, but reproductive health in and of itself is not an actually like historically, it doesn't go far back. Mm-mm. There is not a lot of science on women's reproductive organs.
Right.
And particularly because it didn't matter, right? If you think about, honestly, say what you want, whatever political side of the fence you are, but the truth is men do rule the world and they didn't care about women's health.
Right.
And so there has been no studies or very little study on this reproductive health. So things like a septate uterus didn't really come into play until 20, 30 years ago, because there was no studies on it.
Right.
And so now you think about like women in the 1800s or the 1700s or whatever before it was discovered, you're like, how many women went through the same thing that you did, having absolutely no knowledge of it?
I mean, I didn't know for 35 years. Like, come on. Like, I never had an ultrasound. I'm sitting there telling you, hey, I have really heavy periods. And they're okay, fine. They just don't, there's no protocol for it.
There's a couple of companies out there now that's like, hey, if you have irregular or painful periods, like this is something that I learned too in pregnancy. It was like, just because something is common doesn't make it normal.
Right. Yeah.
Because a lot of people have painful periods doesn't make painful periods a normal thing. Something is up.
Right.
Right. Not that it should be an enjoyable experience, like you're euphoric, but it definitely shouldn't feel like you're dying.
Right.
And, in the same sense. But again, when it comes to women's health, a lot of times they were just like, okay, women bleed comes from like a religious background historically too, that because women bleed, we're dirty, right? The thought process is that we were cleansing ourselves, and that's what this is. And that's not really what's happening in the body. It really is a cycle. It's a reproductive cycle that's going on. And so when things like this happen, you're like, man, if you would listen to me 35 years ago, what what might have been different, you know?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's frustrating.
That's wild.
It is frustrating to think about, but I was very, very thankful. I had the surgery in the end of January, and it only took, and I'm not trying to rub it in anybody's face by any means. I know it's very hard to get pregnant, but just we did it one time and it worked. So
Wow.
it's just like all of the times that we tried before, and then just the surgery was the only thing holding us back.
Well, I mean,
great.
Yeah, I mean, again, women's reproductive health. So we had basically what they call secondary infertility, and I went through the same thing. And mine wasn't anything that needed surgery. It turned out to be, hey, you have a baby that is still breastfeeding, and people say like, you know, lactation amenorrhea should only last 6 months. Well, if you're super stressed out with work and you're depleted of all your nutrients at postpartum, which I wasn't taking magnesium, zinc, or any of that stuff. It wasn't until I got conventional doctors wouldn't take these blood tests so far. So in conventional medicine, health wise, I was the picture of health. When I went down to functional medicine, they were like, "Ooh, you are depleted of D3. You're depleted of magnesium." And there's a lot of things that, if you do some research on D3 and magnesium, where they play a part and a role in this. And so I was having chemical pregnancies. And so again, it doesn't feel like as big as maybe something like PCOS, but it doesn't change the fact that like you were having all these problems. You turned around and you were like, oh, and also I had a parasite. That was the other thing they found. And so they're like, well, one thing can't be sucking off of you, another thing can't be sucking off of you, and then you are doing everything you can, and then you're like, oh, by the way, I need a fourth thing in my belly.
Right.
And so the same thing, and you're like, hey, you can't be trying each month in 2 different uteruses for one baby.
Right. And it has nowhere to grow. It literally has this tiny little area. Yeah. And I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm postpartum now. I know I'm about 2 years, but like I'm going through that whole thing where I had a lot of depletion with my D and my magnesium, and I have parasites, and I have, yeast, the candida. So she's like, I don't want you really she's like, you can get pregnant. It's just going to be harder, number one, but you really work on this and then go get pregnant.
Yeah. And I think like, okay, so, obviously lots of women get pregnant earlier or whatever, but they have kids that are like 6 months old and they get pregnant. But really your body takes 2 to 3 years to really develop healing. I mean, if you think about they say it now, we know for sure, right? That when you excrete your placenta, you leave a dinner plate sized wound on there. That doesn't take weeks to heal. It takes months, right? If you had a surgery outside of your body, they would tell you that you have 6 to 8 weeks of healing plus PT for however long, right? And here we are, we're getting right out of the emergency room, right out of the hospital with a baby, holding this, taking it, right? Breastfeeding or whatever, even however you're feeding your baby, it's still physically damning that you're getting up in the middle of the night to take care of this new being while you're healing from what is trauma from your body. We can't expect our bodies to all come back and bounce back. I'm not even talking about, physically looking. We can't expect them to all come back the same way. And so when I was having trouble with the second baby, because we didn't, we really planned the second one, we were trying, and I couldn't figure out either. And they were like, well, you can't fill an empty cup. Or you can't pour from an empty cup. Yep. And that's essentially what I was doing.
Right.
So
once you filled that cup, it was a completely different story, right?
Literally a month after I did the parasite cleanse.
Yeah. When you really dive deep into things, it's like, this is really the reason.
And it's not always the answer for everybody. Like this one thing happens and it's magic. No. But it is cool to see that when you do prioritize your health, even if it's the end goal doesn't get met, what does come from it? Yeah. So then birth. So you go through pregnancy and labor. By the way, no one can ever prepare you for labor pains. I don't care when people are like, oh, it's like a hard cramp. I'm like, no, it's not a hard cramp. Like I was hot and heavy with I went like this. Yeah. And it never gave up. I never had which is surprising that I'm going to try for a home birth on the second one. But I never had any let up on my contractions once they came in.
Oh. I don't know how contractions feel. I ended up having a C-section.
Okay, so wait, so you ended up having a schedule. Why?
Okay, so he would not flip. He was breech.
Okay.
And we thought at the time that because they did that surgery, it's not a perfect triangle anymore. It turned into more of a heart shape. Okay. So he was getting stuck right here. That was the theory. And actually that theory, he did tell me was true. He was like, he was completely stuck. I saw, when I ripped you open, essentially, I saw what was preventing him. He was never going to turn. I'm glad we did that. Because I went back and forth. I was like, Is there anything else we can do?
I mean, the spinning babies.
Oh,
and all
I
that?
did spinning babies. I did. What was it? What's the other one? Where you're like curb. Whatever.
Oh, the curb walking, or
Stuff,
where you
all
jump
the things.
with your foot. Okay.
I guess it's part of spinning babies, actually.
Yeah.
And then we did acupuncture. We did moxibustion. I don't know if you know what that is.
No.
It's like toe candles.
What?
You put these little like incense candles on your feet, and like I don't know what it does, but it sends a signal to your brain to help them turn. And he would go crazy when I did it. I had to do it. I think it was like 5 times a day. It was it was insane. I was trying everything.
I've never.
It was a full-time job. Trying
Toe
to get
candles?
this baby. Yes, trying to get this baby to spin.
Is it? I want.
Moxibustion.
Is it because your toes are directly linked to your? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I burned myself so many times I can't even tell you because they're little. They're little toe candles. I call them toe candles. It's called moxibustion, and it's very common apparently.
That's funny.
I'd never heard of it before. So I was trying to get him to spin.
I'm just imagining you like laying there,
I have pictures.
like just completely pregnant with these tiny little toe candles.
Yeah.
Like, were you reading a book? Or were you just like?
I watch TV. Yeah. I'd put like a towel down on my bed because there's not really like many places you can put your feet up.
So a lot of ambiance for Justin. He was
Yes,
like, "Oh,
and
great."
it smelled awful.
Awful.
I actually ended up liking the smell, but
What is it? Like an incense?
it's
smell?
like an incense smell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'll like it.
Yeah. So, anyways, I did try to do all the things, and then it came to a point where it was like, all right, let's just get him out safely. Because I was very, very set on having not a home birth. I was going to deliver at Vanderbilt Birth Center for my first because I was like, I kind of want to be in somewhat of a controlled environment.
I agree.
And it was just like kind of a good in between. But we ended up going and having a scheduled C-section. So mine was not, it was very chill.
What was
I
like?
listening to, Taylor Swift.
I've only ever talked. I don't think I've ever talked to somebody that's had a C-section. I've just ever like listened
Oh, really?
online. Yeah. Like, what is it like? Do you feel them in there?
So scheduled C-section I've heard is obviously very different than a emergency. It was kind of like a party in there because mine was so chill. It was scheduled. Like we didn't really have to like get him out like really quickly, right? But no, you can't feel anything. You just feel pressure. You can feel a little sick from the medicine.
Okay, but
like,
you don't feel them like going in on there, like nothing.
No,
nothing.
nothing.
You're just
You
completely
don't
numb.
feel anything. It's wild.
Because I'm like, if someone's playing inside my guts, I feel like I would feel that.
I thought so too, but you really can't feel anything. They were like, they check, they make sure, they're like, can you feel this? And I think like they were pretty much like, can you feel this? I'm like, not at all. We're good. It was crazy. And then all of a sudden, like you just anticipate this, you don't know when it's going to happen. They kind of, tell you like, hey, we're here, a couple more minutes, this and that. But like, you're just sitting there with your partner and like, what's up? We're going to be parents in 2 minutes. Like, it's just crazy. And then you see them. And
That
you're
is
just,
wild.
It's crazy. I was very lucky. A lot of people don't have this, but I did not have a crazy recovery. I was up walking around pretty easily. I have a high pain tolerance. That's another reason why I felt really confident going into home birth or, natural birth. But there was a lot of guilt, I think, associated with it that I wasn't able to. I felt somewhat like, I wasn't strong enough, or my body wasn't doing.
But
no, and I know, but like when you're so set on it
that.
for 9 months that you're
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I have to have a scheduled C-section. Like,
yeah, I think
Kinda sucks.
I think that's how I felt about the epidural, was that I like had failed. But
Yeah.
again, nobody can really prepare you for, and that was obviously an epidural didn't make or break a healthy baby, but a lot of the decisions I made were, what is going to be the best birth scenario? And that was the thing, right? Like the best birth scenario for you was a C-section. And I think
100%.
that's where a lot of people go wrong on I still don't understand why people are so against the C-sections. I know that there are a lot more than there used to be, but I also know that like, if you're going to go conventional medicine route, there's a lot more, there's a lot more technology than there used to be. Right. So I feel safe in that saying that. Mm-hmm. For me, it was like, I was like, I have a high pain tolerance. I'm going to be fine. And I just was not, I think I did like the hypno babies. I'm doing that for this round too. But a lot of people warned me about ambiance, and they were like, hey, because your body goes into fight or flight. And if you have any trauma, which I did, if you have any sexual trauma, you need to address it before, because it will come up and it will come hot and heavy. And I think that the fight or flight in me took over.
Oh, really?
And I got scared. Oh yeah. Because I was like, I remember having a few contractions and being like, okay, this is fine. And then I was like, okay, we need to go to the hospital. And then immediately I was like, we have to get to the hospital. Like I was screaming. And then and then he went downstairs, or he was getting ready to go downstairs to go get the bags. And it had taken us like 45 minutes to get upstairs because there was a lot going on in the ER at the time when we checked in. And so I originally went 2 days before because my water broke and they sent me home. Mm-hmm. So my aunt, who's conventional medicine, love her. She's a NICU nurse. She was really, I don't think she's going to be upset. I'm not blaming anybody, but talking to my family was probably the worst thing that happened to me during my labor, because there was this fear that like the baby was going to suffocate because there was amniotic fluid coming out, right? Because I was convinced that I know that my water broke on Wednesday, but they did not test positive for amniotic fluid, so they sent me home. And so there was all this talk about like, oh, the baby blood pressure, nobody's monitoring you need to be at the hospital, right? Which goes right back into this sort of reliance on conventional medicine. Mm-hmm. And so Thursday rolled around, I was like, I don't know, maybe. And so I went back in and they were like, no. And Friday, somehow, they were like, okay, yeah, you tested positive, go upstairs, right? So I got the golden ticket to go upstairs. Well, there were like 7 other births that day. Mm. And so they're like, we can give you an IV. But no one warned you. Well, I mean, probably people warn you. You don't think about it. The hospital is a fucking cold place. And it's cold for a reason, right? It's a sterile environment because there's lots of sick people.
Right.
So it doesn't feel like home. Okay, Dorothy, it's not going to happen.
It does not.
So, bring the fucking salt candle, like bring the music. I didn't want to like, I have this like internal people pleasing problem where like, I'm like, I don't want to impose on people. I should have just fucking brought everything, and I think about it now. I'm like, okay, I didn't want to impose on taking a shower because they had said they hooked me up to an IV. And so I was like, oh, I have to ask her to come back in and take the IV out so I can go but the shower was the best thing that would have happened to me because I needed to be, And then they came hot and heavy. And so when PJ went down to go get the stuff, I was like, hold me, like, don't let me go. And I wouldn't let him leave the room. I was shaking. I was on all fours like a dog and I was shaking. Yeah. Because the IV had kicked in and it was cold. Yeah. Right. So I'm in a cold, sterile hospital. Yeah. Gave myself an IV bag, which if anybody ever gets, if you go to, any IV place, right, that you have that instant feeling of cold.
Yeah.
Because
you're blankets.
Fluid. Right. It's probably blankets. And so there were no blankets because we didn't bring any blankets and you only have the hospital blankets. Yeah. No blankets, no sense of comfort, nothing. So I think that I pushed myself into that traumatic state of fight or flight. And then I was like, fuck it, give me the epidural,
Yeah.
Also, I was asking all the wrong questions. I did the same thing, when I was considering home birth for the first time. We went to who is now going to be my home birth team. When I first went and interviewed them when I was pregnant with River, my girlfriend came and we came from a very big place of conventional medicine. Mm-hmm. What happens if this happens? And what happens if this happens? And of course, if anything happens that is an emergency situation, you're going to the fucking hospital.
Yeah.
Right. So we came from a place of fear and we were like, hey, what happens if the cords are wrapped around the neck? What happens if mom's bleeding out? Well, of course, you're going to go to the hospital. So the thought process at the time was, well, if you're going to go to the hospital anyway, be there.
Right.
Instead of saying, hey, what are the things I can do to better prepare myself? Like, how can I make sure that I have a low... obviously there's medical things that you cannot, if you of a certain medical background, you can't escape having a high risk birth. But if you are, what can you do to the best of your abilities to have a low risk birth? What sort of ambience can I have? Like what will make me feel better? Right. Like what, down to like, you're 6 months pregnant right now. Like, find the music that makes you soothe, that makes you nearly fall asleep, things that will take you out of feeling like that. So that sense of urgency and anxiety. And I realized during River's birth that I do not live well in the anxiety. And I think I thought I did because like if there's a car accident, for example, right, in my brain, I'm very detail oriented. Okay, what happened? Okay, how do I fix this? Okay, call the cops. Okay, get this right. What I don't realize is I'm basically holding my breath. Mm-hmm. Right. And I don't take a breath until later. And then when I realize the trauma, I let it floods. Yeah. When you're in birth, it's kind of happening at the same time. Yeah. You're like, oh my God, what's happening? Okay. And then you're like, there was a point where I was like literally halfway through before I even got the epidural and I just fucking threw up because everything came together and I was like, all of a sudden, and I was like scared about, that pain and how long it would last. I was scared about what could happen to River or like if my amniotic fluid was going to suffocate her. Like I was scared about pushing and because they were like, oh, in certain directions, they're like, hey, you can't be we won't birth unless you're on your back. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I was scared about her falling in the toilet. Like I was scared about, so I think I put myself in a sense of fear, which was, I was like, I elect for the epidural because that's going to calm me down.
Yeah.
And it did.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally took a 4-hour nap and I woke up and I was 7 or 8 centimeters.
You're ready to go.
And then I was ready to go. And I will say I didn't press the button. So I did feel birth.
Yeah.
But this time around, I'm definitely more inclined to saying, how can I help myself?
Yeah.
Out of anxiety. You know, like really like when someo's having an anxiety attack, you can't be like, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know,
that's the worst thing you can say. It's like, but I'm not okay right
Calm
now.
down. You're fine. Take a breath. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I think thankfully having River, teaching her how to regulate her emotions has really helped me prepare for baby 2. Cause I'm like, how do I not go into fucking full panic when those contractions hit?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but she came out healthy. And again, right. They were like, hey, cause I had a long push and they were like, hey, if you don't get through this in the next 30 minutes, we're going to have to consider a epidural. And I was like,
epidural or
C-section. And I was like, no. And I thought about it too. But in my birth plan, it was like, whatever it takes for a healthy baby. If they were 100%. Like, hey, her blood pressure dropped, this is happening, then fuck it. Yeah. All bets are out the window.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Agreed. I am somewhat like you, believe it or not. I like the people pleasing, like sometimes, but I could also be outspoken. But I knew that in those situations, like, I mean, I brought like a little nurse's basket with like snacks and stuff.
I did the same thing.
It was just like, I want you guys to be like,
I brought them all their little cups
me,
and I literally brought a candle for my one nurse because it was because River's name, her middle name is Malie, which is Jasmine and Ty. And I brought them a jasmine candle.
Aww. You do all the things.
You did all the things. Because I'm like, I want them to love me so much that they're,
Yes.
But
I knew that about myself going in. And you know me, misorganized.
Mm-hmm.
I think a really good thing that I did, or I even had Justin do it because I was like, hey, you got to do this because I don't want to like be that girl. I printed out from, even when we were doing just like the meetings, but I printed out birth plan, like the birth plan of what I wanted.
Oh, see, I didn't print out my birth plan. I just said I have a birth plan.
Down to, I had on the back, I had instructions for Justin where it was like, after birth, immediately order a Jersey Mike sub, and it had like what I wanted on it. So I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be like out of it, and like it was bad. But no, I just had everything. Like if this goes this way, if we have to go C-section, go this way. If I really do want to have, immediately skin to skin. I want to keep,
birth plans are so they're important. Yes. I think because even again, a birth plan is essentially a guide if everything goes the way you want it to, and if it doesn't, whatever, right? But the wishes of the mother are so important, and I think what we're finding out in ours, we thankfully had doctors that listened to us, but there are a lot of people who have bad experiences, and I think if one of the things too that I will always advocate for now is a doula. Like we had a doula in our room, and I was like, because there were points where they were like, hey, we have to do this. And she's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
The
advocation is huge.
Yeah.
And like, that's why I had that there. I'm like, there's no questions. I don't have to sit here and keep re-advocating for myself because especially at Vanderbilt, it's a bunch of students coming in that room. You're not seeing the same person twice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say if you are a people pleaser, print out your birth plan.
Yeah.
And give it print like 10. And be able to give it there.
And be prepared that not everybody's, thankfully we live in, like St. Thomas, I was Centennial, you were Vanderbilt. Thankfully Nashville has a pretty good program of like, I guess if you want to call birth plan crunchy, where they're okay with that, and a lot of the things that on your birth plan will be protocol for the doctors, right? They're okay with skin to skin. Yeah. They're okay with,
right.
What people don't realize, and I think where the headstrongness of the hospital comes from is that they're essentially a business. And so everything is about liability and the bill, right? And so if you veer off a plan that could potentially go awry and they don't fight you on it, then you could come back and sue them, right? You could, if they were like, hey, you can't keep your placenta, and you're like, I'm keeping the placenta. I'm like, okay, fine. They don't fight you on whatever it is. I know a lot of people have issues at the hospital, but you're fighting a fight that isn't, you're going to lose because if that's the sense, then you can hire a birth team and have a baby at home because everything out inside of those 4 walls is run like a business that does not want to have lawsuits. And they're like, again, they're not there are some asshole doctors, but I'm going to say most of them aren't assholes. They're just following
Their procedure.
Well,
Well, that's a good example of that is actually Vanderbilt would not allow skin to skin right after during C-section. That it was one of the it's the only hospital I think in Tennessee that will not allow skin to skin. I mean, I held him for a second, but then I had to give him back and I didn't see him for 30, 45 minutes. So I wasn't able to actually hold him or breastfeed immediately. And that was something that I really, really wanted, but Vanderbilt did not allow that.
Okay.
And I forget the exact reasoning behind that, but it was a liability issue. Was what I remembered. So it's just kind of crazy when you do get in those situations, like what the rules are and why and stuff like that. So
right. And I'm not saying I fight the good fight on a lot of things too. Like, when my HOA bill goes up or when I'm forced to pay a fee for electric vehicles, but I'm not saying not argue it or not fight for yourself or not advocate for yourself, but understand that the choices that you make have certain consequences. And one of those being that you're in a business that has a lot of liability. And I'm trusting that you're not the first woman who ever gave birth that wanted to have skin to skin at C-sections. And there's a reason for this rule. Right. And whether or not you agree with it, you like it, you hate it, it just is what it is. And so you have to kind of maneuver around those things.
Yes.
Ultimately, though, I don't know if that would have been one of those cases, but there's a lot of things that are liabilities in the hospital that if you advocate hard enough and you just say, hey, I'll sign a waiver that I won't sue, but I want that. Yeah. A lot of times they'll do that.
I feel like I mean,
if you fought it, right? Yeah.
I mean, I went to my doula and I was like, what's up with this? Is this actually a thing? What's going on? And she was just like, Vanderbilt just doesn't allow it. That's one thing I don't like about Vanderbilt. So I loved my birth and C-section. Everything was perfect at Vanderbilt. That was the only thing.
I loved all my nurses. I think I had like one of the best experiences as far as like nurses and the doctor that delivered her was awesome. She came back in the room and checked on her. That's why I'm saying, I was like, I think doctors in this day and age, when you have such a crunchy front, like you have like this wet, Eastern style functional alternative medicine coming through, there is a time and a place where it does fight conventional medicine 100%. Well. And then there are times where you're like, I can see why, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. That's why we want to go.
That's why we're in the middle.
Yeah, in the middle. And we want to do home births next time, too.
Yeah. We're going to, maybe I'll film my home birth. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh.
Well, I am going to film it, but I don't know if I'll post it. We'll see.
Okay. Well, definitely film it.
Yeah. I have a photographer, which by the way, birth photographers are not cheap.
No,
it is like, it's like a wedding
they're
photographer
there for forever.
They are. I'm not complaining about a pricing. I'm just saying, fuck, I didn't realize it was expensive. Because I'm like, I want someone there to film my birth.
Right.
Because you think about like doing like family photos and shit, and you're like, okay, a couple, $1,000 or $600 or whatever, and then they're like, oh, that'll be $3,000.
I was gonna say, how much is it? Just tell me. Jeez.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
But they are. I mean, they basically cut. I mean, here's the thing about birth is you never know when you're going to go.
Yeah.
So they basically cut off the 3 weeks of the, what it could be.
They're on call.
Yeah. They show up in the middle of the night. They're there for fucking hours.
Yeah.
Getting
never
pictures.
Want that job.
Yeah. No. So I'm like, you know what? And she's traveling an hour away because she's like one of the best ones, lives an hour away from us. So I'm like, all right. Yeah, the pricing seems right. You know?
Yeah. So makes sense.
Yeah. I would say that is the only thing too that I've learned with home birth is that there's a lot of things that insurance does cover. I would say if you have insurance, definitely check with your insurance prior to doing any of these things. But not the problem, but the difference in a conventional medical birth and a home birth or a midwife doula situation is you're paying up front.
Okay.
So like in a conventional medicine situation, you're, you go to the hospital, you get the work done, the hospital then bills you, and then you either can negotiate pricing, get your insurance, put a payment plan, whatever it is, like student loan style. In this place, you're paying the front half. So you're basically saying, hey, under the midwife, it'll cost about I think it's like about $5,500. We have to have that ready by 36 weeks.
Okay.
So there's so if you're planning on a home birth or if you're planning on doing things a little bit less conventional, then you need to save.
Yeah.
If you can, obviously, if there's fun babies that show up when they want to, but
right.
But if that's your plan and you're planning birth, I would say start saving. I don't know.
Yeah. Or if that's something that you're like, okay, I just need it to be covered by insurance. What I learned too is like the reason why we went with the birth center and we were originally going to, I think, deliver at St. Thomas was that it was like a home-like situation, which I really liked. And like I said before, there was, if I needed to go to the hospital, it was right there. And I felt a little bit more controlled environment since it was my first. And it was covered by insurance just as if we were in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
So that was really, really nice. It's, it's your deductible essentially. So if you kind of want that home birth experience, you can definitely get that. Look up some birth centers that are connected to like a hospital program like Vanderbilt. And they can usually work it out for you.
I mean, I will say what's nice about this scenario is that we're paying before the year's up.
Oh, yeah.
Because obviously babies due next year. So with River, the deductible restarted. So all the stuff that I had prior to birth didn't count towards the deductible. And so we paid out of pocket.
That was a lot. But
so if you're having February babies,
But same thing, like I had a December baby and I forget what it was, but my sister-in-law was like, you should have that baby in January, try and hold off. And I was like, why? There was a reason to it. I can't remember exactly why. She had a good point. And I was like, that's interesting. So it's like either way, I think you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So insurance isn't the best. I mean,
so then anything that year, that's what it was. Anything that
the rest
year,
of the year
you're
covered.
good. You're done in January. That's what it was. So
yeah, that was me. So yeah, so I guess it's whatever.
Yeah. Like
you're paying for it either way.
Yes. You're doing it. It's the same thing at the end of the day. So,
but
yes.
How many babies do you want? If you can't, if you had a choice.
2. It's just me. I don't want to be outnumbered.
I agree.
I just don't. Yeah, too much.
PJ's thinking about, I mean, it's so funny because this one was really tough. First trimester, like sickness and stuff. And so he was like talking about it and he was like, oh, well, and I'm like, and hopefully with baby number 3. And I'm like, we're not even halfway through this one. Can we wait? Can we just see what 2 is going to be like? Plus every time I foster an animal, you get pissed about the house being smaller. So we can't be like just throwing babies out here.
Right.
Like,
but I also feel like after you have 2, it's just like, whatever.
Maybe.
It's what I've seen too.
Maybe they're just like,
But I don't want that whatever.
I heard after 3, it's like that. Because 3 is like a hurricane. Because it's the first time you're outnumbered.
Yes. Well, and 2, like you're conscious, can't say the word, parent. So like you want to be very intentional where you don't really want it to be whatever. You want to be like intentional with
But see,
every
that's
kid.
why, okay. So like when we did the episode when we were going through like our non-negotiables, I'm like, sometimes I feel like it's because I have one baby that I'm such a psycho.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Not that like I wouldn't care. I think that's not what I'm trying to say. Like, is that you don't care when you have more kids. I think your attention is so split.
Yes.
On the different children you have.
You have.
Yeah. You have to let go of the control that you have. Yeah. It's easy to be a helicopter parent with one child.
100%. Yeah.
So we'll see how this goes. Maybe I'll just be like, okay, now my kids can have Oreos and Doritos.
I don't think you're going to.
We'll be doing McDonald's every Friday.
I don't think you're going to. That's what my other non-negotiable was. Sorry, we got to cut
what?
That. No fast food. Because I was like, where did it go?
Wait, no fast food?
Yeah.
0, like no Chick-fil-A?
So the exception was Chick-fil-A.
Okay.
So
I haven't done Wendy's, but I remember Wendy's was because someone told me like Wendy's was like a healthier, not healthier, but
healthier.
Like no Shake Shack. What would you consider fast food?
Are we going to cut this into the other episode?
No, I mean we can go, but we're
not wearing the same clothes. I'm like,
we're doing it now.
What I would consider fast food is like Taco Bell, McDonald's, like anything you can go through a drive-through. I don't consider Chipotle a fast food, even though they do have a drive-through. I wouldn't.
See,
because they're a little bit
teeter-tottering here.
I wouldn't consider because for the most part they make their ingredients pretty fresh, right? Mm-hmm. There's definitely some stuff in there like the sunflower oil that I'm not big on, and I don't think that their meat is.
I heard they weren't doing sunflower oil. I heard they were doing like a 0.
It's right on the bag. Maybe they changed it. I hope they did.
Okay, I saw something that there's a Hop Dottie here does an oil, and I heard that the Chipotle was doing that. I don't know. We could be wrong. But yeah, that's another topic for another day. No fast food.
Yeah.
Damn it, that was a good one.
I'm kind of mad that I didn't do that one because I feel like I came out with no vaccine. I was like, I know I have the other one. What is it?
Oh, you made up the vaccine one?
No, I didn't. I had it as like 6, and I was like, why is this 5?
Oh. Well, on that note.
Yeah, childbirth stories.
Yeah.
Everyone's different.
Everybody's different.
Yeah.
I think it's fun to like talk about birth stories and like go through, all the options. And that's what's fun about life is just that there's a lot of decisions and a lot of things that happen from there. But at the end of the day, the one thing that the nurse that I will leave you with is at the end of the day, the goal is to have a healthy baby.
Yes.
And so no matter what happens, C-section, or vaginal birth, medicated or unmedicated, home or the hospital. At the end of the day, you just want a healthy baby.
The birth is just such a small part of their lives. It matters, but it doesn't matter in the scope of things. As long as, like you said, healthy baby, you're good. So
Yeah.
as
So
long
we'll
as they're
see you
safe.
next time
Yeah.
on the Truth Mom Pod.
Dropping bombs with the Truth Moms.